Hi, I'm Dr. Sally Foote, a veterinarian and animal behaviorist with over 35 years of general practice experience. We're here today at the Bella Behavior Learning Center in Tuscola, Illinois. This is a space that I have created to teach low-stress veterinary care to veterinary and animal care professionals to help make care at the veterinary clinic as well as at home a lot easier on our little friends here like Binks. This is the front of the Bella Behavior Learning Center. I do my presentations on PowerPoint here, and oftentimes I also live stream these as a hybrid, and this is the demonstration table that I use. Up here I may have a stuffed animal like a stuffed cat or dog, or I will have a model like Binks here where I will demonstrate how we will use rewards for him to learn to stay still and be cooperative for injection, how to use the towels for towel wrapping, if we're going to practice, say, with muzzling on the cats, along with the reward in here. So let's continue to walk around the Learning Center. Come on, Binks, let's take a little walk. As you come around here, I have tables set up. These are nice, long tables where they're wide enough to be comfortable for when you sit and take notes, but also when we do practice with stuffed animals for the handling or other using the tools to practice using them before we move into live animal handling. I love this blackboard here because I like to write down notes and also some of the questions that the attendees may have or ideas so that we can write them down here. Let's continue on back this way where I have this small kennel area, and the beauty of this place is that I have created a mocked up area just like a veterinary practice. So this is so that you can practice the handling in a setting that's just like it is at the office, but with the safety of being able to take your time. You're coached one-on-one by myself and other certified low-stress handlers in the space so you can really learn right away how to do it right and ask your questions and have the time for that. Hi, here we are in the treatment kennel area of the Bella Behavior Learning Center. I have a bank of stainless steel cages, just like the cages that we use at our veterinary practices and our shelters as well. And you can see our little friend Binks is in here. And so at the Bella Behavior Learning Center, when it comes to the hands-on, immersive, one-on-one coached sessions, students are going to individually, each student is going to need to get a cat like Binks out of the cage. They're going to have to read the body language of the cat. They're going to have to describe and decide what tool they're going to use to get that cat out of the cage. And we have things like towels and blankets and other things to make it easier to get the cats out of the cage. And one-on-one, myself or one of the certified handlers will coach you through the steps if you need help. This is also where we can practice getting dogs safely out of the cages here. So we have our leashes, especially our two-part quick release leash, and we're going to have you practice how we toss a reward in for our aggressive or anxious dogs, because you never want to reach in there. Have the leash where we lure the dog through the leash. Using the leash, have the dog come on out, and when we lead them back in, how you're going to take that two-part leash to keeping your hands out of the cage, remove the leash from the dog safely without getting bitten. A lot of what we're going to learn about here is how to handle that anxious, aggressive, painful, or ill animal who's not medicated because they needed to come in for care, or their medication may just have been started and is not completely, working a lot to modify their behavior. It is dependent on your handling skills. Over here, we also have a dog crate, because oftentimes in our low-cost spay-neuter practices, we are having to use crates, or in an emergency, or at times we may need to use a crate at our shelters. So learning how to teach the dogs to go in there readily, or especially if we have to find ways to lead them in there when they're injured and sick or an emergency, and keep it positive for them, that's what you're going to learn. You're going to be coached through so you can immediately use these skills the next day at your facility. Over here we have scale, typical platform scale, which some dogs don't like getting on. And again, The students, each one is going to have to lead the dog onto the scale. They're going to need to read that dog's body language. They're going to need to describe how they're going to do this. The coach is going to be standing there ready to help guide them as we get the dog on the scale. And you have the flexibility to move the scale away from the wall, cover the scale with something different to help make it easier for the dogs. Lastly, we've got a couch. And we have a couch here because a lot of times I found in my practice that some dogs and cats really were far more relaxed when sitting on the couch or maybe sitting in the lap of the handler on a couch, not on the exam table. So having this here helps to give that flexibility and creativity that I really want the students to learn to be able to think that way and use that whenever they're caring for and handling animals at the clinic or the shelter, and then also how to tell their clients to do the same when they are at home. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a walk through the model practice area where we have the examination room and the reception area and where we practice our handling skills there. Hi, we're now in the veterinary practice, model practice area of the Bella Behavior Learning Center. In this space here I'm in was the reception area, and it looks like a typical veterinary practice or a shelter care practices entry intake area. So as you can see, I have a platform scale here. Like a lot of places, practices will have the platform scale up against a wall, and actually kind of close to a counter. But the counter makes it handy because we have our tools here, which the students are going to choose to use according to the patient, the dog they have in front of them, for getting them on the scale and weighing them. Remember, when we do this, the coach is going to be standing nearby, watching the students lure the dog on the scale, move the scale, maybe cover the scale with, say, a blanket like this or a mat to help make it more appealing. We have the adaptal here and bandanas, so that way the student can make it best for this animal to get onto the scale, ask their questions, and be coached by that instructor so they really learn how to do this the best way for this patient. As we come along over here, this is where, like a lot of practices, it's kind of a little tight, where we have the reception desk, we have seating, and we have our cat and the carrier. And we have things like a towel nearby because we're going to have the students mock up like leading that dog past to go into the exam room, but it could scare that cat. So before we lead the dog past, we're going to take a towel or blanket and cover the cat, or we may say, hey, let's move your kitty up here and face them the other way, and then lead the dog through. So we're keeping it less stressful for the cat as well as for the dog, not to be, startled or attracted to the cat to want to chase after him. Let's go over here now. We're going to go into the exam rooms. Hi, we're now in the exam room area of the model veterinary practice at the Bella Behavior Learning Center. In this space here, it isn't actually it's an old examination room area from a human medical doctor, but I have taped it off to was our typical 8-foot by 10-foot space in a veterinary practice. I've put in the chairs like we usually have where our client sits. We have our exam table, and of course that back counter area, so that we are actually practicing the handling in this kind of narrow U-shaped space that many of our clinics, are set up like. And so this is where we're going to, one-on-one, the coach is going to watch the handler take a dog, how we get them up on the table, or we choose to do a floor exam. It's all going to be based on that animal in front of that handler at that time, how that handler is going to describe how they're going to approach the animal, how they're going to handle the animal, and then we're going to be watching them to make sure that they're following those best practices for low stress handling, especially for the painful, aggressive, or anxious animal, because that's when it's really most important that we are keeping the stress low to provide safety for ourselves. We'll also be utilizing or using some of our safety tools, like practicing with positive muzzling or using positive handling with gloves for our cats here. So this is a great space. On the other side of this tape is establishing that line for, we can't go past it. On the other side of the tape here, that's where some of the other students will be observing, so that way they're learning also from these one-on-one coached handling sessions and can share and collaborate with ideas to make it best for handling in our practices.